I will do, as usual, a quick summary to basically re-put everybody on track on this. So the subject of this series of lessons is data journalism. And we started with the first lesson. It was a little bit of an introduction that can be obviously seen on my presentation, but also, since I'm here, I'm going to tell you again a little bit of the main process, which was the core content of the first lesson. The second lesson last week was mostly about data visualization concepts that are always preceded by something called data cleaning. So I'll give you a quick summary of this. I'm going to go full screen, so I'm not going to see you, but if you have any issue, you can interrupt me anytime. So now I'm full screen. If you ask me to choose one slide from my entire course and say, which one is the most important one, I will give you this one, because it's a summary of the entire process of data journalism. Data journalism is, in a nutshell, is a methodology that leverages data to elevate your stories or to find new stories and tell them by using data. So it's a process. It's not something that you do in one shot and it's done. It's mainly a process. And as a process, it starts with the main ingredient, which is data. So we discussed how to find data, how to ensure that the data is, robust, verified, but also how it can be uploaded into a data visualization tool. So last week we looked into the second phase, which is called in two ways. It's called filter, or in some other context, you will hear about data cleaning. So data cleaning is the process of taking the data from for example, the United Nations or from any data source. We used the UN Habitat report last week, but it can be the World Bank, it can be the National Institute of Statistics of Greece, or Eurostat, or any National Institute of Statistics of any country. You can download the data, but then you have to clean it. So the cleaning happened by basically doing two things, and share my screen again to show you quickly how a clean data set looks like. This is a clean data set. So it's normally a data set that has a first row called header, which is row number 1. It's all clean, meaning there are no holes, there are no empty rows or empty columns, there are not blank spots or errors in it. It has to be a perfect rectangle. That's the trick I use all the time. It needs to be a perfect rectangle. And if you have a perfect rectangle, then you're ready to move to the next step, which is data visualization. And last week, we, after having taken a look about data scraping, which is another way of cleaning data or extracting data from PDF files, this took about half an hour last week. If you have questions about it, you can ask me and I'll come back to you on this. But what I wanted to say is that once you clean the data set, then you can move into the most colorful phase of data journalism, which is visualization. And this is what we're going to do today. So while last week we had a lot to do with tables, which are very difficult to understand on from the screen, this week we're going to look into visualization, which is a way better and more fun and more colorful and more design-oriented way of telling stories. So we're going to use a tool called Datawrapper. This is something also I mentioned last week and the week before. Datawrapper is a free tool for data visualization, widely used by the most important media in the world. And this is something that basically you can find on the New York Times, the Guardian, Der Spiegel, even a couple of Italian magazines I collaborated with, like Internazionale. They use Datawrapper as a data visualization tool. Obviously, you need data. So this is what we've done until now. We've found data, we've cleaned it, we prepared it to move into this next phase. On my screen, you see two examples of visualizations made with Datawrapper. One is a map. It's an interactive map. The purpose of our last lesson next week will be to make maps together. It's not exactly the same process of visualizing data on Datawrapper that we're going to see today, because the data is a little bit different. You need geographic data for that. So today we start with charts, which is something you can see here on my slide as well, on the second, in the second visualization here. So we're going to make charts together. Everything that we make with Datawrapper is responsive. So it means that it can be opened on mobile phone, on tablet, on desktop computers, without remaking it 3 times, for the different formats. So if you shrink your window on Datawrapper, you're going to see how it looks like on a phone. And it's responsive, so it will change automatically to adapt to all types of devices. So it's a very cool feature of Datawrapper. This is, again, an example of visualization called scatter plot. This is something that we can make together with Datawrapper. The reason why I really like this tool is because you don't need to code, or you don't need to be like a computer engineer to make a visualization. You just open Datawrapper, you load the data, and we're going to do that together, and then you click on the visualizations that you want to use. It's like being in a restaurant and you have the menu and you pick the visualization that you need. This is how it works. It's very easy, very user-friendly, and you don't need to install anything. You just open Datawrapper.de, create an account, and start visualizing the data. This is a screenshot from the Spiegel, which is a German magazine. They use Datawrapper all the time. And as the Spiegel does, you can put it into the website of your magazine or print it and put it into a PDF file. So this is how it works. It's a very, very handy tool for visualization. Obviously, we're not paid by Datawrapper, so there's no reason for me not to mention the competitors of Datawrapper, just in case you have time and you want to see alternatives. On this slide, you see a lot of other data visualization tools. My favorite is Datawrapper, but I also like row graphs a lot and Flourish. So my 3 favorite ones are Datawrapper, Flourish, and row graphs. Infogram is something that a lot of other people like. It's mostly to make infographics. So when you want to have multiple charts into the same visualization, then maybe you try Infogram. They all work more or less in the same way. You don't need to be a programmer. You just open the website of these tools, load the data, visualize it. That's all. So this time I'll share my entire screen because I will moving from tab to tab, and I'll quickly close the other tools that I don't need here. So I'll quickly open Datawrapper. This is how it looks like. You go on the website, datawrapper.de. I advise you create your free account for one reason, because if you create your account, that means that you can save your visualizations and then restart from the visualizations that you started instead of losing everything. If you don't want to create your account, there is a possibility to use the tool without creating an account. You click on create new visualization and you start using it. So I'll go back there. If you don't want to create the account, you click on this button and you start using it. I think they made it so that people don't feel like they have to give their email. They can just start playing with it. And that's it. The other option is to create an account. So just do it if you want, whenever you have the time, after the session or during the session, up to you. Once you create an account, you can click on dashboard, and you get a little bit like a Google Drive situation, where you have all your documents archived. So, which means that this is a cloud-based tool. So if you reconnect from another computer, let's say that you connect from your personal computer, but then you go to the office or to university, you connect from there, you will find everything into your account, like Google Drive. It's a cloud-based tool. You don't have to install it, in other words. So how does it work? So you can go here. Well, here you already see like all the charts that I created in my past few weeks. This is called dashboard. But if you want to create a new chart, you go on create new and you click on chart. And this is where you can choose if you want to create a chart, a map, or a table, right? So we start with charts, we said today. And you remember the 4 phases of data journalism? You have data, you have cleaning, you have visualize, and then you have publish the story. So Datawrapper is trying to replicate that process into the software. And they obviously start with an upload data section, which is very, very intuitive. You can upload your data by copying and pasting. You can use even some sample data sets here, which is what I'm going to do now. And then later we upload our own data set. And this is where you would put your data. This data can be copied and pasted from a spreadsheet. So for example, this spreadsheet here, which is the one we scraped last week, it's a section of it. You can copy, you go back here, and you paste it. It will work. We'll do that in a second. If you have a file, you can upload it. So if you have an Excel file or a CSV file, you can upload it. If you have a Google Sheet, you can link it there. And this is basically an easy way to keep all your data on Google Drive and keep all your visualizations on Datawrapper. Sometimes I use this feature and I just copy the link, put it here. It will have to be a public spreadsheet if you do this. So you have to configure it and set it in a way that it's shared with anyone with the link. But sometimes it's doable. You can put it here. If it's in another website, not on Google Drive, but on your personal website, you can put the URL of your file here, and it will work. But the easiest way to do it is copy and paste, especially if you start now. And this is just like a global emission data set that is available in here. And I invite you to do it on your own after you see me doing it, because it will basically help you break the ice with Datawrapper. So click on proceed. After you click on proceed, you have this situation where you can clean the data in a way, because you see it as if it was on Google Sheets or on Excel. It doesn't look like text anymore, but it looks like Excel. So this is like an internal Excel, a very limited Excel inside the Datawrapper that has only one purpose, which is the purpose of basically checking that the data is clean, so that it's not like, for example, you have one cell with letter and one with number. You see it's red. So this is something that is not allowed. Now I'm going to put, I'll put the same number here, like this. When you see a red cell here, it means that it's problematic. It's a mistake. It's also written here on the left. When you see green, it's a date. So I assume that you know what type of data can be handled by Excel, right? You have numbers, dates, strings, which is basically text, and then currency, and a few others. So on Datawrapper, you can upload, basically all formats, all types of data. Date would be colored in green, numbers will be colored in blue, and then text will be colored in black if you have text. As you can see, the first row is very important. We mentioned it last week. It's called the header. I always advise to keep it, but if for any reason you don't have it, you can disable it here, and it will basically ignore the header. So the header will be considered like a row of data, but this is not the case, so I'm gonna put it back. So here the data is already clean, but sometimes when you download it from the World Bank or from the Institute of Statistics, you have to clean it before you upload it. But here on this phase of Datawrapper, you have a chance to check if it's clean or not. And the moment you see a red cell, you need to be alarmed that you have to basically clean it or fix it if there is some problem. But in this case, it works. So I click on proceed. And as you can see, Datawrapper is already generating a file that is, a visualization that is ready to be used, interactive. It has a little bit of AI inside that understands, for example, if this data set is a time series, because it has a column with dates, in that case, it will suggest you a line chart or an area chart, because area charts and line charts require a time series, require at least one kind of column with dates. So what I'm saying is that you can basically try and upload and see how it goes. And then if you don't like it for any reason, you can click around. As I told you, it's like being at a restaurant. And you see if other formats or other chart types fit with your needs. You can really play with it. Some will not work. Some will work. Like, for example, this one is very cool because it breaks down the columns in different charts. All of these automatically. It's quite amazing. And to do this without Datawrapper, it would take some time. Especially if I think of like 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, when you had to use JavaScript to make something like this. It would take hours of work, and you needed to learn how to code. So this is not the case anymore with Datawrapper. Obviously, there are charts that don't work with your dataset. So for example, this one is not good because it will basically, put the ears as slices of the pie chart. And you can see this chart is broken. It doesn't really work. So you need to try and see which one works best. Why doesn't this one work? Because the total of the pie chart is not like 100% of something. It is basically the ears. And you can't really see, for example, the different type of emissions, if it's from gas, from fossil fuel burning, or from other sources of emissions. So this chart is broken. But again, you can generate it with one click. And then you pick the one you like. You need to be very careful that you pick the right one, in my opinion. This one, for example, is cool, but it's very, very long. So it depends if you have space on your magazine for such a long chart. At the end of the day, I think the suggestion made by Datawrapper is the best one. So this one is probably the best one, in my opinion, that you can create. One cool thing of Datawrapper is that it will show you how it looks like if you have like colorblind audiences. So if somebody in the audience, your user has like a colorblindness problem, which is, I read, 1% of the global population. So it's a lot of people, especially if you are, your story is read by millions of people. somebody will have this problem. But if you click on this colorblind check, you will see that the colors, the contrast of your chart works well with different types of color blindness. You can see how it looks like on tablet, how it looks like on mobile. You get these previews very quickly. And then obviously you have the possibility to customize the chart. So to customize the chart, you have to click on these tabs here. After you pick the type of chart, you go here on Refine, and you start playing with this. So for example, a very important parameter that you have to configure is custom range, especially of the vertical axis. And now I'll show you why. So if you change the custom range, look at this, for example, and you put maximum 100,000, this is how the chart will look like. If you add even more to that, you put 200,000, this is how it will look like. So now I'm encouraging you to think critically. What happens if I change this? If I put it back to the maximum of the data, this is how it looks like. So you understand that these two charts are sending the opposite message, even if they use the same numbers, because the table is the same and the table is correct. We cannot ignore this aspect. This aspect is very important, because if you change the vertical axis range, you change the message. So again, if I put it this way, it looks like, okay, this is nothing worrying. It's very little. There is a little bit of an increase, but not very dramatic. But if I change it and I put like this, it looks much more important. You're putting the emphasis on the change. If you put it this way, even more. If you put it this way, even more. So, and there is no rule here. It's up to you. You are a journalist, so you have to decide which message you want to send. You are the arbiter here. And you will decide if you want to change the message in a way or another, if you want to mitigate the message, or if you want to create an emotional impact on your user. So if you ask me, of all these parameters, because again, you have a lot of other things to do here, like changing the colors, changing the opacity, very intuitive stuff. But of all these parameters, the most important one is this one, vertical axis. So this is so important because it changes the impact of your chart on your audience. So you have to spend a little bit of time tinkering with these parameters. Most of the others are not so important. Like, for example, this one is, do you need a grid or not? You see the grid in the background? It's an aesthetic feature. It's not so substantial. But the vertical axis is so important. Again, now I invite you to play with it now that you have the chance to use Datawrapper, and tell me what you think. This is something that you can do after the lesson, or you can do it now in real time. This is completely up to you. Then there is another thing, which is the legend. This is the legend. It's so important. You can include it or not. I always include it as a rule of thumb. You can show tooltips on header, like you can make it interactive or static. So if you make it interactive, if you go on the chart, you will read the numbers. If you want to hide it, you go here, click like this. And that's pretty, I mean, as you can see, this is ready to be used. Here you can customize the colors. For example, you want to use the colors of the logo of your newspaper, you can do it. You can change the colors manually. If you have the accurate color codes of your magazine, of your newspaper or radio, or whichever media you work with. You can put it here and have the perfect color match with your logo. But if not, you can just use the colors that are the default colors. They are very beautiful. And they are tested with colorblind people. So there is another very important tab, which is called Annotate. But it's very intuitive again. So it's where you would change the title. So if you want to put the title in your language, you can. It supports all alphabets, including Greek alphabet. So you can really publish in any language. This area here is for this part, which is called description. So it's like something you put just below the title. And then you have the notes here. Super important is the data source and the link to the data source. I told you in the first lesson that a chart without a source is not a good chart. You can't use it because you are not being transparent about where the data comes from. So this is absolutely mandatory if you are a data journalist. There is another interesting section, which is text annotations. You can add your notes and then drag and drop them anywhere you want. And you can also draw a line. I think you already know why I'm doing this. Like, why is this useful? Because you are guiding your user through the chart. You are telling the user, hey, look here. In this moment in history, something happened. That's why we have like a peak, or we have some sort of change in our trends. So this is basically the issue. If you don't do that, if you don't add annotations, then the user may get lost in the chart. So it's absolutely crucial, in my opinion, to use it. And this works very well as a segue to show you, for example, another slide. I'll quickly interrupt Datawrapper and I'll show you how the Financial Times makes charts, basically. This is a Financial Times from the UK complex chart. So here you see the anatomy of a chart, which is something you can reproduce on Datawrapper, basically. You have the title, the subtitle, which is called description on Datawrapper, but it's the same thing. And you see how many notes or annotations are here. These are explanatory annotations that are absolutely important for the users to look into the right place in the chart. So it's like a guardrail that you're putting in place for users to understand what happens in each of the lines or in each of the areas of your chart. So the Financial Times does that all the time. So if you happen to read the Financial Times, you will find a lot of these charts with so many notes in them. I always say it's a key aspect of charts, even if it sounds very easy, but it's important because you are basically letting the reader focus on the right part of the chart. So luckily, Datawrapper allows us to do it through this section here. And again, there are two types of notes. One is the one that I've just made, which is called the text annotation. And then there is another one, which is called range highlight, when you want to highlight a phase. This is super cool because, for example, it's not a point that you want to highlight, but it's a phase, like a time range. So you can do it. And then again, you can move it, shrink it, or expand it. And then you can add text into it. So this is something that you can do by creating another annotation, put it here and say something happened here. For example, if you are making a demographic visualization of your country, you will show, for example, the last century evolution of your population, and you will see that there are bumps and peaks. Sometimes, for example, tragic events will reduce the number of people in that country. You can explain what happened there. Or if there is an economic boom, you can explain that that's an economic boom. If there is a crisis of any sort or a war, you can help the users understand what's going on. And if you don't want it anymore, you can remove it this way. It's super easy. It's like clicking around. So I think this chart is almost ready. So what do we do now? I think we click on proceed. And there you go. You can basically do different things here. You can, for example, I don't know, if you want to, here you want to customize the features of the chart. For example, you want to add an embed link here. You want people to be able to download it as an image. Very, very intuitive stuff. You can also make it automatic dark mode, which means that if somebody is opening the chart from a phone and that phone or tablet is in dark mode, for example, because it's evening and the screen is dark, the chart will look dark as well. So you're making it adapted to the screen of the user, which is a nice feature. If you want to add the social media buttons, you can also do that. I know journalists love this, so you can add this. And you can also manually change the URL that you are sharing if you click on these buttons. Or just say, share the link where this chart is embedded in, which is probably the best choice for a newspaper. Because if this chart is into an article, when people click here, they will tweet the link of that article. That's a good thing. And then you click on proceed, and you basically finish the process. You check again if you like it or not. Click on publish now. And this is how it is. You have a fully fledged chart that you can embed anywhere. And you can also, for any reason, download it in PNG, which is image format. Or you can copy the embed code, or just copy the link. So there are two ways to do it. One is the link to the chart. So if I click here and open it, it will look like this. It's like the chart into the Datawrapper website. Not the best choice for newspapers. The best choice for newspapers and journalists is to click on the embed code. Then you embed it into your CMS. So if you are writing articles on WordPress, the same way you embed YouTube video, you embed this chart. You need to copy this embed code and put it into your CMS. If you don't know how to do that, you will talk with the tech team of your newspaper or the person who manages the website. But I assume that it's an easy thing to do. Most of you will be able to do it. If not, just ask your web manager to help you with that. And there you go. You have a great chart. I've done it very slowly because I was explaining everything. But if you do it quickly, it will not take more than 20 minutes. So now I'll quickly stop sharing, and I want to see if there is any question. And I also have a little bit of water. So I'm going back here. Any question from anyone? I'll mute myself for a second.
Yes, have a couple of minutes to relax. I have some questions, but I wait for the others also. If you have any other questions, please. feel free to ask Jacopo. Sophie, yes, the microphone is muted.
I have to unmute. Thanks, Jacopo. So when you put your data sets, is that right that Datawrapper will suggest the best visualization first? Usually it's the one we should select, or sometimes it doesn't work?
Very often it doesn't work, very often. So my suggestion is to give it a chance. If it's a simple data set, it will, get the right one. But if it's, for some reason, if you don't like it, you can just play and check which one you want. I would not delegate that choice to Datawrapper completely, but it's a very important choice. So sometimes it does. So when you have a time series, it will suggest a line chart or an area chart, for example. If you have like percentages, sometimes it will suggest a pie chart or a donut chart. But it's a pretty simple way to suggest charts. So I would always put my critical eye into that. Also, when you select the parameters, always put your critical eye in use. For example, the vertical range is so important. Never ignore it. Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks.
You're welcome. Okay.
I would like to know, is there a print version of the charts?
Say it again. What kind of version of chart?
Print versions that we can download the file and upload it in a print newspaper.
Yes, print, yes. So you can download it in PNG file, which is an image. I think it's high definition, so it should work. If you want PDF, I'm not sure you can do it with a free version. If for some reason you need a PDF, but you can always download a PNG and then transform it into a PDF on your own. What is not possible is SVG. SVG is not possible. So vectorial, no, it's not possible.
But you lose the interactivity.
And if you print it, you lose the interactivity. Yes, that's one thing you keep in mind. The most advanced information designers I know, they always want SVG as a format, which is vectorial. For that, I suggest Flourish. Flourish will give you the SVG, which is another tool. But it works very similarly to Datawrapper. So that's the thing. And yeah, thanks for your question. Should we try and upload the data in a different way? Maybe another type of chart. We do it together from scratch again, so that in 20 minutes time you have seen it again. Would that be a good idea? And next week we're gonna do maps, and I also want to keep maybe 15 minutes to do a quick recap of the entire course. And if we have time, I want to again stress on the arbitrarity of like visualizing data. Why is it so arbitrary? Why is it so easy to send the wrong message by visualizing data? Because one of the problems with these softwares is that anyone can go there and generate a lot of charts, but then maybe they don't have the time, or they don't have they don't ask themselves the right questions, and they basically push out a chart that will send a strange message. People misunderstand it. So how charts can lie, that's another thing that I wanted to stress. And I'll do that after we've done all the practical parts, if we have time next week. So before I will start doing the entire visualization process, and I'll reshare my screen quickly, I'll show you a very important resource, which is the Academy of Datawrapper. So you're doing the lessons with me, and I'm obviously very happy you're doing that. But if for any reason you need to dig deeper and you need more time to, understand every single type of chart, see how it works, see why it's, when to use it and when not to use it, there is this fantastic resource, which is called Datawrapper Academy. where you can go and find a lot of tutorials. And it's very well organized. It's a little bit like an encyclopedia of charts. Like this is how to make a pie chart. It will do what we're doing together, but for every single type of chart and maps as well. So I invite you to bookmark the Academy of Datawrapper because it's really amazing. I think it's the most interesting parts are on the complex charts, like for example, the scatter plot, which is a multi-dimensional visualization. It's more difficult to understand. So maybe when you have time, you want to dig into this and find it here. So keep it in mind. The scatter plot is something that you see all the time on the Financial Times. And it's probably one of the most complex charts for ordinary readers to interpret correctly. The others are more or less familiar, like line chart. I think people mostly understand line charts. And then the others also are very intuitive. So this is the Academy. Let's go back here. Actually, let's go back on Datawrapper and do another chart. So this is where you start. Start creating. So now I want to use this UN Habitat report that we found online last week. It's this PDF file that last week we scraped. I'll quickly open it. It's huge. It's like 500 pages. And we detected one page. We found a table that we wanted to use. And we scraped it by using Tabula. So we extracted that table, which I think is somewhere here on page, well, it's not so important to find it now, but I wanted to show you the life of a data journalist is also a life of like scraping data. I think it was 250 something. So it happens that you need to scrape a table. It's called Annex. Somewhere down here. It's 362. So this table, which is crazy, because if you have to copy it, so first of all, this is a PDF file, right? So you can't copy it. I can show you if you copy it, it will look horrible on Google Sheet. So if you copy and paste, it will look all in one row. This is because it is a PDF file, yeah? So this is not a copy and paste from PDF to Excel is not a good option. Copying it manually, it takes forever. Imagine like copying one number per time, put it into the right cell. It would take forever. We don't like it. So we used something called Tabula, which is this tool. We download it. It's for free. If you have Windows, you download it from here. If it's Mac, from here. You run it into this file, and you extract the table. The table will be then uploadable in Excel, like this. So this is the table of the statistical annex that I showed you on PDF, transported into a Google spreadsheet. And that's fine. So you can cut or slice the table the way you want. I prepared it to be like this. So this will show you the kind of urban change of population in the world. And because the UN Habitat is a report on urban and rural populations in the world. A lot of people are moving from rural areas to the cities, and this has an impact on the environment and a lot of other problems. So I took it and I sliced it. I extracted like some data that I want to turn into a chart. So this is how you move normally from data to visualization. You come here, you copy it, and then you check if it's clean. And it's not really, really clean. And I can tell you why. Because it's not reading the data correctly. So we have to go back here and remove all the commas. So let's go, well, let's try first of all to download it as a CSV file. You have to play with the data a little bit. You open it and see if it's going to be read correctly. So it seems okay to me. Copy and paste didn't work. You see, these numbers are all in black, while they should be blue. That's the reason why I'm saying this is not okay. Typical scenario where you have to try another way. Try again, let's see. I'm doing it with you because I want to show you why sometimes it's a bit of a nightmare. So by playing with it and trying another way to upload it, we got it right. Why I'm saying this is right? Because you have the numbers here in blue. So sometimes if you do copy and paste, the information will be translated mistakenly from Google Sheets to Datawrapper. In that case, I always suggest to try another way. You download it in CSV, upload it, and then hopefully it will work. This is the trick. Sometimes you have to do multiple attempts. Do you all remember the difference between CSV and XLS? They are the same thing. XLS is Excel. It's like a spreadsheet. CSV is a text-based format for Excel files. And while Excel files can have multiple tabs, CSV only have one tab. So you go, this is normally why you use it. You go onto the sheet, the tab of the dataset that you want to play with. Go here, download, and you pick CSV. I guess if you pick XLS, which is Excel, it will not work correctly because you have multiple tabs. So Datawrapper will not know which one to visualize. And we know that we want to visualize this one. Correct. Okay, so now that we have the right numbers into this, we move on, proceed. And as you can see, it will make a suggestion. To be completely honest with you, I'm not a big fan of this line chart. I wanted to do something different. So I would probably use a different kind of visualization. Grouped columns, it's an interesting visualization. It's a bit crowded, in my opinion. There are too many categories. So now I would love to be in the room with you to ask you, how would you change it? Because it's too crowded. So I'll ask you this question, and then I'll give you the answer. So for example, this is a good option, right? We can change the title from here. If it's too crowded, then the typical question that you ask yourself is, do I need all this data into it? Do I need the users to know what happens in the world, what happens in more developed regions, less developed regions, least developed countries, less developed regions, excluding least developed countries, so on and so forth? So my suggestion here is to simplify the data and pick the most important ones. So the less, the more. Less is more. This is a design motto. And I can tell you that in data journalism, less is more. Because people get lost if they have too much into the same visualization. So one potential option here is to go back into the data and filter out those that you don't want. So maybe you want to have more developed regions, or maybe you want to have high-income countries, middle-income countries, and low-income countries, and that's all. So in that case, you would basically clean it. This is also data cleaning, and that's why I'm showing you. There you go. Then I think it's a good idea to remove the rows. So you select all the rows that you don't want, remove them, and you are cleaning the data again. Then, do we want to show how it changes over time? I think it's a good idea. So we keep the time series. If we just wanted to show people how things are now, or just the most recent data, we would also remove these other columns. And then you have a snapshot of that particular year. But I think in this case, it's interesting to see the change over time. So now I'll go back and try again to see how it looks like if I do it again. You go back here, clean, you upload the new data set, proceed, and you have a cleaner data set here, right? Proceed. I think this is actually very interesting. It shows how things are evolving. So high-income countries, the population is not really changing dramatically. Middle income is actually changing dramatically. The world overall is basically seeing in like from 2015 to in 20 years only, there is a major increase in the world population that lives in the urban areas. Don't forget that this is actually millions of, I think, thousands, so it would be billions, which is something that you need to keep in mind when you're visualizing the data, like what's the unit that you're using. This is explained in the report, but you have to make sure that the final visualizations also captures the unit. But anyways, this is already a more friendly chart. Let's see other options, because you never know. These line charts don't look very good. They all look the same. Let's see this. Yeah, not a big fan. Let's see the horizontal version. This is actually quite interesting and easy to understand, in my opinion. This one is too crowded, in my opinion, hard to read. So what you have to do, you have to train your eye and try to put yourself into the mind of your readers. You can always take this chart and ask a friend of yours who's not a journalist to interpret it with you. And in that case, you will get a very interesting feedback. You can ask also somebody who's not from the same age group, maybe somebody who's like 20 years older or 20 years younger, and ask, what do you think of this chart? What conclusions do you draw? So you do a little bit of user testing with your friends before publishing it. It's always very useful. Then, you can do what we saw before. You can change, all these kind of parameters. It's quite similar. Each chart will have a different set of parameters. Again, you have the vertical axis range, which is super important. I think my connection is not going very well. Oh yeah, it's going well. If you put the maximum into 10 million, you get this message. If you put it to 6 million, you get another message. So up to you. You can reverse the order if for any reason you need to do it. You can sort the bars. Legend, yes. Legend, no. Then here again, you can do the annotation that we were talking about. If you want to explain something in particular in that chart, you do it. And change the title. For example, I don't like Word all in caps. If you want to go and change it, you have to go here and rename it here. And I think now it will look correct with the right caps. I think you got the spirit of it, right? You spend a little bit of time doing the annotation, explaining where you want to put the attention, and then proceed. And there you go. You are basically, these are parameters I rarely touch. I always leave it the way they are. They're not very important, in my opinion. The most important ones will be the social media buttons, in my opinion. And then, again, if you are logged in, it will send you the embed code. If you're not logged in, it will send you the embed code on your email. So this depends on how, if you're doing it from your logged in account, or if you're doing it from another tab. This catalog is a very interesting resource because it's a collection of types of charts. It's called the Data Visualization Catalog. It's also in different languages. But why is it so interesting? Because it explains the philosophy of each chart. So you can also search them by function. For example, are you showing comparisons like high-income countries versus low-income countries? You are showing proportions like large versus small. It's a hierarchy. So some people probably have come across a tree map. This is a hierarchy because you have categories like clusters of objects that you click and you explore inside. So this would be a so-called hierarchy. I think if people have time and don't feel comfortable with the types of charts, spending a little bit of time on this catalog will be helpful, so that you know how to translate numbers into visualizations. It really depends on the story and the type of data that you have. Let's see, for example, the famous donut chart. It explains the pros and cons of the donut chart. You have normally when you have a donut chart, you have a total of 100%. For example, this is useful when you have the elections results. So how people voted. Did they vote for a certain party or another? And these days we have so many elections. So you see a lot of these donut charts everywhere. Some of them are very intuitive. Some are a bit more complicated. Like the Datawrapper will let you do a bullet graph. This is already more complicated, right? This is useful when you want to break down a number into different numbers. So it will make a dissection of it and explain how to read it. The more complex you get, the more challenging it will be for users. So you need to find the right balance between complexity and, simplicity and accessibility. Obviously, you don't want to sacrifice everything. You want to make something interesting, but to a certain level of complexity, because otherwise people will not understand it. This is according to my experience, obviously. It depends on your audience. Okay, so I hope I answered your question. It was a chance for me to share this nice catalog, which I'll drop in the chat.
Yes, it's very important. Yes, and actually, it's better to make more graphs than to put in one graph altogether. I think so. In order to have simpler graphs for readers to understand. But if the readers are experienced readers, like financial that read financial data, so maybe it is they know how to read the complex graphs and line charts. But if the readers are simpler readers that they don't they're not used to read complex graphs, then it's better to split this graph since a simpler one.
Yes. Sometimes you can also visualize the same data with multiple charts. And you put the emphasis every time on a single point of the chart instead of cluttering everything together into the same chart. So you help people digest and assimilate the information. Obviously, the reader of the Financial Times will be, used to see charts, so it will be able to handle a certain level of complexity. But maybe the reader of of a newspaper that is about daily news without going into numbers all the time, or even a tabloid, or a magazine that is good for entertainment. Maybe people don't have time to spend half an hour on a chart, and to make it a bit simpler. So this all depends on your public, and every people who joins my workshop, every person will know their public best than anyone else. They know who they're talking to. So I invite you to test it with your readers and see how they react, and then you improve on it. For example, it's nice to see the comments under a chart. Sometimes people really don't understand it. So in that case, you need to understand why.
Yes.
So then the next time will be a bit more accessible.
Yes.
A lot of the work is about user design. Like, how do you design something that is understood?
It's true.
That's something that you can do because you know your public. So
Okay,
you have all
there
the
are some graphs. There is sorry for disturbing you, but there are some graphs that the user is able to define the complexity. For example, to define which variables are visualized in this specific graph. Since it's a interactive graphs, sometimes you can see, for example, to check specific boxes for all the years, or only for 1 year, or only for a specific column. So they can easily make it simpler or more complex. Is that case in our case, in Datawrapper, or not?
Give me
We
1
cannot-
second that I wanted to show you how I use it in real life, because you see, even if you don't read Italian, don't worry, I will translate it for you. This is about the Erasmus program in the European Union. I made a data journalism story on Erasmus in Europe. How many people are doing it? Where do they go? How many don't do it? So the way I structured it is as follows. I have like text that will explain what I'm investigating, what I'm looking into. And then I start proposing a series of charts. This chart will show for each country of Europe. Let me try to zoom in a little bit. Maybe it's easier to read. So this is where do they come from, the Erasmus students, and where do they go? So you see like inbound students, Erasmus students, and outbound students in each country. So in Greece, you have a little bit of balance. You have as many people who come in as they go out of Greece. Some countries have a very different situation where, for example, France, in orange, you see the outgoing students, and the ingoing students would be the green one. So France sends out a lot more students than the ones who go to study in France for some reason. When the UK was, this is UK, Regno Unito is UK. So when the UK was part of Erasmus, because a lot of people wanted to go and study English, they had a lot of Erasmus students going to the UK, but the UK students didn't go out. So this is a lot of information, and it's made with Datawrapper. You have 3 types of information. You have inbound and outbound students, the 2 colors, and then you have this number here, which is the absolute number of students who are inbound and outbound. So you have different ways to read it. If I only published it this way, I think a lot of people would have got lost, but I explained it in detail in the text. So I use this as a trick. Then if you scroll down, here I show the comparison between how many people do Erasmus in Europe and how many don't. There was a moment when we were talking about Erasmus generation, which is a very intriguing and beautiful concept. But unfortunately, I looked into the data and I saw that a lot of students don't do Erasmus basically in Europe. This is a few years back. So this is changing, but it's still a minority. Still a minority of students are doing Erasmus. So I compare, the part with the whole. This is a simple visualization. Then I show how the Erasmus budget changes over time. And because in my mind, my idea is that it's not enough, I changed the vertical axis to this. I put 100 as the maximum. And I show that the budget is growing, but it's not enough. So for me, it's like I show that it's not so big. Another way to do it, you can compare it with other items in the European budget and show how, for example, Europe is putting into agriculture and how much it's putting into education and Erasmus. That's another way to do it. So what I'm saying is that, yes, I think try to answer your question. You want to break it in multiple charts most of the time, and you can do that with Datawrapper. When people start using it, they have the temptation to put everything together into one visualization because they feel like, oh, wow, you can click, you have a lot of data all together. But then if you test it with your users, you feel like they're not really looking into the right message that I wanted to send. So this article I made is from a few years back, but it went very well on social media. People like that topic, especially the readers of that magazine. They like that topic, so it worked out very well. Let me quickly share my screen and I'll show you where to find the data. I'll do the data research with you because I didn't prepare to show you the data, but I'll do how I would do it. Let's say that Flora is my editor and comes to me and says, how do you make a data journalism project on Erasmus? Can you do it? Maybe the editor will give you maybe 1 week or maybe 2 days, depends on how often you publish. But that's how I would start. So I go here and I do like Erasmus, Europe, data statistics. This is how I normally start. And then it's the second or the first result. So luckily, the Erasmus program is very well analyzed by the European Union, and the European Commission in particular publishes a lot of data about it. So now you have data from 2022, which is very interesting. You could make an update of my story, for example. You go here, and then you start looking for the statistics. So you scroll down. I think here you have an annex, which is very interesting. It's like a summary of the statistics. We can open it and see what's inside. So it's a PDF. You can have a preview here. You skim through it. If you have time, you read it. But you see, it's full of tables. So you feel like you're getting closer to what you need, right? So now I ask you, or like a generic you, not necessarily you, Flora, but if a PDF like this, you download it, and then what you can do, you can scrape it with Tabula, right? This is what you can do. What we did with the UN Habitat report. It's the same process. So here you have all the data. Look, if you zoom in, you have mobility for students and stuff. And then you have receiving countries here. And you have sending country. So you'll have to scrape this table and clean it in a way that you can revisualize it. And if you have time this week, and if you want to test it, do it, and then next week you can send me the result, and I can comment it for you if you want. And this is for any student. So, but this is not the only avenue that we have to find the data. The other avenue is to hope that the European Commission will let you download the Excel files directly. So you don't have to scrape it, because scraping it takes a little bit of time. So now I know the European Commission, they are good with data. And I knew that they let you download the raw data. So you go here, you find the Excel file, and you download it from here. It can be a lot of data. So sometimes it's easier to scrape it, because you see the PDF, you take the table you need and scrape it. If you dive into the huge amount of statistical data, then you spend a lot of time into, for example, Excel. So this is completely up to you. I will let you play with it, and I will share with you this page. You're welcome, Flora, no worries. There you go. If you have time, write your stories about Erasmus, because it's a very cool project, a cool project of Europe, but also a cool project for data journalists. So it has a lot of data. It's fun to work with. And it's also very tangible. You know, people know what students are doing when they do Erasmus. They travel around, they learn new languages. It's a way to spread it.